Hello, and here we are, back again at Perfectly Paranormal, episode 125. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we have an interview for you with Ellie Pechet. Ellie is a natural-born shaman, a medium, an astral traveller. I can't wait to hear Ellie's experiences with astral travelling. And Ellie's also an author of Hitching a Ride, which is a guide to earthbound spirits and how they affect you. Ellie works worldwide, healing pets, people and wildlife, all through her Pechet Healing Technique. So let's get into our interview with Ellie. It's lovely to have you here with us, Ellie. Welcome.
Thanks, Anna. It's good to be here. Nice to meet you in person, sort of.
Yeah, it's lovely. Would you like to share with the listeners what it is you do and some of the stories that you've prepared to share with us today? I'm really excited to hear them.
Yeah, I'd love to. I guess the thing I'd like to start with is I love the name of your podcast and your YouTube, Perfectly Paranormal. I'm a metaphysician, medium, natural-born shaman, and author, and all the healing sessions that I do, and that is really the biggest part of my life is working with clients, helping humans, helping wildlife, helping pets. I feel like I'm always working, but it's what feeds me and it's what I'm here for. And so I'm not complaining. And, I guess what I'd like to say is that all the healing sessions that I do are paranormal. And my ability to intuit and literally dissolve the issues that I deal with clients are all considered paranormal because they can't be explained by science. Now, why is that? Why can't the work that I do, that you do, be explained by science? Because at the scientific level, it has to be a very dense form, right? To be something scientific, it's like the bottom of the bottom, the most dense form that it can be. And what you and I do is very different from that. The intuitive healing work I do is at a much higher vibration. I work a lot with light, and we all know that light is not dense. It's anything but. It's the opposite of what science would be able to prove, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of the skeptics go, well, it's not scientific. I'm going, yeah, but the energy in your home has changed. Can't you feel the positive changes? Yes, but I can't say. They can't. They have no words because their scientific brains can't cope.
Because they're brainwashed. A lot of people are brainwashed.
Absolutely.
Right? They've grown up thinking that if you can't prove it, then it's not real. Well, how ridiculous is that, really?
Well, if you can't see it, it's not real. I mean, I'm like, seriously? I mean, I could describe so many different types of entities and beings that are around us all the time. They're vibrations, they're energy. You can't,
right.
Well, you can see energy sometimes, but we're not talking about that today, unless you do. But they're around us, and you accept it and understand why your body reacts certain ways sometimes when you can't medically or physically or mentally or emotionally explain it.
Yeah. Well, and Anna, as you well know, the medical field is so dominant in our cultures. And guess what? The reason that I get a lot of clients that have been through the medical process without getting any luck is because all the medical people, nothing that they do is intuitive. They're not taught to be intuitive. They're not taught to, tune in to vibration or their own intuitive ability, and they've shut it down. They've turned it off, and that's why the most common things that the medical doctors do is prescribe medication or recommend surgery, because that's all they can come up with.
I think they'd be shunned if they looked at things at an energetic level, which is kind of sad, but it's the way the
Very
world
sad.
works. This is why there's people like us around.
That's right. That's right, because we work with vibration, with high vibration, preferably with light, and those things are definitely not medical. But also if you think about it, remember we are the original healers, people like us, right? Working naturally, with herbs and with intuition. The white men took over out of their desire for power and because of their own greed, and they completely distorted what healing is supposed to be about. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I've worked with young people, sort of verging on adulthood, with marijuana addictions, or they're people that just can't get off the couch. I worked with a young man who had issues and he just couldn't get off the couch. And every time he worked up the courage and went, you know what, I want change. I'm just going to get up and I'm going to move ahead with my life. He found himself back on the couch again and he just could not go to work. When I worked on him and found that there were entities present because of emotional imprints that he'd created or absorbed from others and so forth, once that's removed, yes, I still suggest that he see a mental health professional to work on other issues that may come up. But the next week, his mum messaged me and went, I don't know what you've done. He's not even on the couch anymore. He goes to bed and he gets out of bed and goes to work, and his girlfriend and him are getting engaged. And it was like, wow. It was like this veil was lifted off this young man. He'd been suppressed by these entities because they like to
Yeah,
keep people in a certain state because then they can
shut
feed
down.
off them.
That's right. That's right. Good work.
So
Nice.
you have lots of beautiful stories to share with us today about your experiences working long distance, working using astral traveling to work with animals, and I'm really excited to hear those. Would you like to share them with us?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I came up with just a few that I thought the audience would enjoy hearing about. Do you want to start with wildlife, the work that I do with wildlife remotely?
You start wherever you want.
All right. Well, when I was working with Spirit this morning, they kind of had me put the stories in order, in a certain order. So I will trust that. I do a lot of work with wildlife. That's probably my greatest passion, even though working with people is what pays the bills, and I'm really good at that, and I enjoy that too. But the first story that I have is uh, astro traveling to Cape Cod Bay in Massachusetts, which is where I'm from originally, Massachusetts. And I also lived on Cape Cod for about 20 years. And I was able to, well, let's put it this way. Every year during there's a change of seasons, as most people know, and the weather goes from being really beautiful and warm to very cold. And the temperature in the ocean can drop suddenly, and it often does. And the Kemp's Ridley turtles is the most common group of turtles that get affected by the drop in temperatures. And what happens is there's a crook of Cape Cod. It's shaped like this, and they like to hang out in the crook because it's warm. There's a lot of fish. There's a lot of jellyfish, which they love, and so they are like feasting. They're feasting on those jellyfish. The water's warm, and they just want to stay there.
Yeah.
And what happens is the water temperature will drop really, really quickly, and then they will go into hypothermia. And they're not able to, they lose their ability to move, to swim. They go numb, and then they end up washing to shore
Yep.
and are vulnerable to predators, animals, people. So I have the ability, and I've done this where I would, just kind of get really quiet, close my eyes, and literally astro travel to the ocean to connect with these Kemp Ridley turtles. It's very murky. The water's really murky. It's hard to see clearly. And that's how I know that I was there, was because I was actually in the murky ocean telling the turtles that it's time for them to head south so that they are safe and they don't go through this experience of hypothermia. So that's one example that I wanted to share about my work with wildlife. Do you have any questions about that, or
I'm
I
just in awe
can?
about how you do
Oh,
this. I've worked
uh,
from photos with animals. I do a little bit of animal clearing. You'll laugh. It's mainly been cats, dogs, and chickens so far. Oh, and one parrot named Romeo.
yeah.
But I'm a very photo driven person. I work visually with a photo of the person or the pet or the place, but I don't astral travel, not that I know of. So I'm really like, my ears are wide open to hear how you
Oh.
do this. I just find it fascinating.
Well, you are the first person besides myself who works with who can do healing work using a photo. That's usually how I work with either with wildlife or with often with someone's pet or with a client's children
Yep.
or husband or parent, because they're often, not on board, not usually as advanced or as evolved as the client who found me. And so they will send me their photo, their name, and some basic information, and I get the same results with with the people, with their relatives. Same thing with the pets. Like, well, I can give you an example if you want, of a pet that I worked with. I was actually working with a couple. Each of them had their own sessions, and then their cat started bleeding from the rear end, and they didn't know what it was. And they took her to the vet, and the vet didn't even know what it was. So they wanted to, they were having success with my work, and they said, "Well, can see what's going on with her." And it just took one session for me to diagnose and intuit a bleeding ulcer that she had. And I muscle test when I'm working with people and animals. And that's how I knew that I got confirmation that it was a bleeding ulcer. And I actually was able to heal it in that same one session in her case. And the bleeding stopped the next day, and she was fine after that. Yeah, that was working with her picture. The nice thing about working with pets and animals using their picture and being able to remotely heal is that there's no stress. They don't have to be schlepped in the car and brought over to your house, especially if they're in a different state, since I work with them all over the world. And they're relaxed in the comfort of their own home and to get the best healing available, right?
Well, that's how it works. And I have a lot of local people here as well that say to me, "Oh, can I come to you? I think I've got an entity issue," that quite often they'll call them. And I say, "Well, I work remotely from a photo because you don't want to be sitting at my kitchen table for 6 hours while I'm mumbling away and using my pendulum and talking to myself and talking to your higher self and clearing the energy. You just go about your day as normal." People find
Yeah.
that really, really hard to comprehend, that with permission, I only do work with permission. With your permission, you've sent me your photo, you've given me your first name, your last name. I have permission to connect to your higher self, your soul energy, whatever you want to call it, to do this work for you. You don't need to be physically present. And they feel the changes afterwards, especially teenagers. They're like the young man that had the marijuana addiction, like seriously, came from a horrible home life. Parents didn't care, weren't fed properly. This led him to the addiction issue. He willingly sent me his photo. He said, "I don't believe in this, but I've done everything else and nothing's worked." I worked with him, and he and his mates messaged me 2 days later, and there was lots of, "Wow, I don't know how you've done this. It's like, wow, it's amazing. He's made all these changes." It's fascinating what you can do working with the energy of someone. This is where the doctors are missing out on, well, they're working with the textbooks for the body and the mind, if you see a mental health professional, who does the energy side of things.
Well, they're not working intuitively at all. That's the problem. That's why they always resort to prescribing medications or surgery. I had a young woman that called me out of the blue. She found me online, I guess, found my website, and it resonated. And she was scheduled to have a surgery to have her gallbladder removed. And when she told me what her basic story of why she had scheduled the surgery, actually, she was a very healthy eater. She was vegetarian, maybe even vegan, and very healthy physically. And all of a sudden, she started having these tremendous pains around her gallbladder. And of course, the doctors recommended having it removed. And then she set up a session with me because intuitively she knew that there might be something else going on and she didn't have to have the surgery. So I did a medical intuitive scan on her, and I found an entity wrapped around her gallbladder. That was the source of the pain. So I removed it, and all the pain went away. She canceled the surgery after her session with me. And if she had had the surgery, if she hadn't found me and if I hadn't removed the entity, it would have probably just jumped onto another organ. So what would she do? Keep getting her different organs surgically removed? I mean, come on. None of that needed to happen, but she did need to find me so that I could identify what the cause was of the pain. The work, you know, the work I do is so rewarding that I hadn't even written that. I wasn't going to even talk about that one, but I thought of it when we were just talking now.
Well, this is how interviews roll. We just go with the energy in the moment. And I find that fascinating that we're so similar in the way that I don't do medical intuitive work. Mine is more mainly emotions and what I call trauma imprints that people, there are actions that people have experienced, they've absorbed, or they've created themselves.
I have a couple more examples I'd love to share about the animals if you want to hear.
Oh, absolutely,
And
always.
yeah. So a client told me about a whale and her calf that were swimming off the coast of Georgia. And the calf had been run over by a boat, leaving a huge gash in her mouth. And I did 2 sessions on her and 1 or 2 on her mother separately. And the gash that resulted in her mouth made it very painful for her to nurse. And she was still needing to nurse. So I did an emotional and actually 2 physical healings for the calf. She needed the 2 for her mouth because the gash was so bad. And I did 1 or 2 with the mother who was frantic with worry. You know, those sessions were enough to calm the mother and heal the mouth of the calf, and she was able to resume nursing again. That's one. I've done a lot of sessions with whales over the years, most typically getting caught in fishing gear or hit by boats. Those are the 2 most common incidents of wounding that happens to these whales. Shift gears. I did astro travel to Australia when you had the big fires there. They were like, what, 3 or 4 years ago. It was very difficult. It was painful for me to witness what I did. And when I astro travel at night, when I'm sleeping, I leave my body and I go sometimes and I help where I'm needed. And that was one of the times that I helped the animals either transition or heal.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember
Yeah.
seeing the koalas, a lot of the koalas and the wallabies. We're well known for our bushfires here in Australia.
Yeah. So it's that balance, between being of service, doing our work, helping our clients, and then also saying, you know what, I need this time for myself. I need to recover and recuperate so that I can continue to be of service, which is what we're here for.
Do you find you can turn off your intuitiveness? People say to me, don't you turn it on and off? And I'm like, no, I have no idea how to turn it on and off. It is part of who I am and it goes
Yeah,
everywhere with me. Are you the same?
I'm the same. Someone asked me that, someone that I was spending a little bit of time with socially, and she said, "Do you ever turn it off?" And I said, "No, not really." Part of it is that I want to be available if there is an animal, especially who needs my help.
It just stays on 24/7. It's even sleeping. They even come into your dreams sometimes.
Well, I usually astro travel at night, unless I say I'm definitely staying here tonight. I'm not going anywhere. I need to rest. And I went to Fukushima, and when the nuclear disaster happened, and all those leaks that were leaking into the ocean, and I went there to help people who had been exposed to the radiation until I started getting sick. It was so far to be traveling, and that takes a lot of energy.
Yep.
I had to stop doing it.
We have to have limits.
You have to have limits. So I know sometimes when I wake up and I'm like really exhausted, it's because I probably was out astro traveling and helping people or wildlife that needed it.
Yeah, it's complex work. I love what I do, and that's what I say to people. You want to open this door? It is a lifestyle. It is not something you do for fun. It's not a party trick. You are intuitively helping people in places. Do you work on the land as well? Do you find you get calls? So you were saying you went to Fukushima to help the people. Do you work with the land? Does the land ask you for healing or help?
I've done that too. When I was living in North Carolina, I worked with the land, and my presence there actually allowed some very negative energies that had been stuck in the land to be released, because those energies can cause cancer and sickness and lack of well-being and peace of mind. So my role there was to release those energies, and that's what I did.
It's really, really complex work. It really, really is.
It's very complex. It is. Yeah. You want another story?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, please. I
This,
love them.
well,
Yeah.
this is from last week. Whenever I think that I'm just going to go for a walk in a pretty place and get some fresh air, it never happens like that. There's always someone or something that needs my help, and I went to a spiritual service because that's part of how I receive my nourishment. And then I wanted to go to a new place and, go for a walk. I found myself, as I was looking for a place to park, there was a young black horse, and its human, its owner. I don't think it's right for us to see ourselves as owners of pets. They're human. But anyway, so I come across this big macho cowboy, probably in his 50s, and a horse that he was trying to get onto the trailer, and he was having trouble. And I could tell that because I'll start tuning in, to the animal like a radio station. It's fuzzy at first, and then it gets clearer the more you as you're tuning in. And I could tell that the horse was already traumatized and was afraid of his owner, which is not the way it's supposed to be. Pets and animals, the way to get an animal, especially a horse or any pet, to do what you want is to do it with kindness and with communication. And he had his friggin', riding crop in his hands, and I'm like, that is not cool. I didn't say that. Instead, I asked him if he needed any help. He got very defensive and said, no, I don't need help from people like you. And because I said I work with animals, and he said, so do I. Anyway, I wasn't able to help then. At the time, he did eventually get the horse onto the trailer, probably by hitting him with the crop. And I was so bothered that the next morning I did a healing on the human, the macho guy, and the horse. And the healing that I did for the owner, because I'll muscle test, whether it's the person or the animal, what they need. And so for the guy, I needed to clear power struggle with the young black horse. So I did that clearing. And then the imprint I did, because I always do an imprint after, was to be, in partnership with the horse, made him strong for that, So it would be more of a like a team effort, like working with the horse instead of I'm the superior human, you're the inferior horse, and I'm gonna make you understand that. That's what abuse is.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And then I did a healing on the horse. And what I picked up with the horse was that he was already traumatized by the owner. And so I cleared the trauma and then I imprinted him with being resilient, like with knowing that he's resilient and he can work with the owner. And that was without using a picture. That was just by memory. I was able to tune into to both of them. So that felt good. That was just like a typical wanting to go out for a walk and needing to, seeing a situation where I could help and wanting to.
Yeah, it's like the universe puts us in these situations sometimes. It puts us in these places because they know. I'll be sitting at home and I'll hear, you'll love this, it'll make you laugh. And I'll hear in my head, you need to go to the shop, which is our local sort of small supermarket just about a kilometre away. And I'm like, no, I don't need anything at the shop. I'm fine. And I'm working away. You need to go to the shop. I'm like, no, no. And it'll keep hammering away at me till I go to the shop. And what it will be is that I'll just walk around the shop and I'll walk through something, which will be some sort of dark or demonic entity that's been, usually they drop off other people and it'll be sitting there waiting for its next hitchhike. It'll be waiting to get onto someone else. So they send me to the shop to pick them up and I bring them home and move them on. I'll work out what they're attached to, what their favourite vibration is, because they'll always have something, whether it's rage, anger or hatred or abandonment or shame or whatever it is that I see is their food vibration. And then away they go again, back out into the environment. But I had to remove it from the shop because maybe there was an elderly lady that was going to be walking down that aisle pretty soon. We don't want her picking that up because that would probably affect her mentally and emotionally. You have a book on the screen with you called Hitching a Ride. Now, I'm really interested where that came from. What inspired you to write your book?
So this book is a big part of my service this lifetime. And the reason I wrote the book, and it was a lot of work, it took me 7 years from start to finish. The reason I wrote it was really just to increase the public's awareness that negative entities are a real issue, that people really do become earthbound sometimes when they die, and there are different reasons for why people become earthbound. So I talk about that. And I also talk about demons and my work removing them from clients, sometimes also known as exorcisms, in the Catholic Church. That's what I do. And yes, they are real. My experience is that they go to different places. I send earthbound spirits that I'm freeing, I send them to the light, and I find that demons like to go into the underworld because it's what's familiar to them. So while demons are on the earth plane, they like to create the same situation that they have in the underworld: drama, trauma, darkness.
It is absolutely what they do. But it's been really lovely speaking with you today. Did you have any more stories that you wanted to share with our listeners?
Yeah, let's see. There's two branches to my work. One is the work removing negative entities, earthbound spirits and demons, which is what the book is about. And you can get it on the website, phoenixrisinghealing.com. People love it. And I wrote it in a way that people could receive it and handle it. It's not like real textbook style. It's done as a lot of case studies that people find interesting when they read about. So they're finding the material interesting, but they're also increasing their awareness by reading it, which is what the point is, what my goal is. The other branch of my work is, and I'm glad that you get it, like you totally get it, like, because you're doing this too.
Yep.
The other branch of the work that I do, which is really what I love, is healing things like grief and depression, anxiety, phobias. I was able to bring a client named Paige to peace after being completely shut down with grief for 7 years after her only son died. He was murdered his first year in college. So in her first session, talks about that on the website. I've got like over 100 video testimonials talking about different things that I've helped them with. And I love healing grief because it does shut people down. And then it's like their life just becomes, going to support groups to talk about their pain and then being in pain when they're not in the support group. And I'm like, no, life is short. You're here
Yep.
for a purpose. I want to bring you to peace about the person that you lost. And I can do it in as little as 1 or 2 sessions. And that's why it's my favorite thing to heal for clients. A couple of other stories that I wrote down to share today. One is a client who is also from Australia, and her 5-year-old son had a severe phobia about being in the water if his feet could not touch the bottom. And so she had me do a remote session with him, working with his picture, like we talked about.
Yep.
And what I intuited was that he had a past life in which he drowned. And so I cleared the past life. And as soon as the next day, he was not afraid of being in the water if his feet couldn't touch the bottom. So it was really neat because, she reports back to me after. But that was, the work that I do affects the client's life for the rest of their life. So now could have been afraid of water the rest of his life. I nipped it in the bud by clearing that past life when he drowned. Another kind of similar one, but involving a pet. I was at a friend's house one day, and it was in the summer. She had a pool, and she had a dog who would become frantic every time she would get into the pool. And he would pace around the pool, very anxious, barking, and he wouldn't be calm until she got out of the pool. And she said, "Ellie, what do you think is going on with him?" So I tuned in, and it turned out that the dog had a past life with this owner in which she had drowned and he was unable to save her. And so that memory would become active every time she would get into the pool, which is the body of water, in this life. So I did a clearing. I did my Pechet Healing Technique on him. I did a full session that day to clear that past life memory of not being able to save her. And then he was fine. Animals have emotions. Pets have emotions, just like we do. I mean, if you think about, a classic example of how excited a dog gets when her owner comes home, right? Jumping up and down, barking, licking their face, that's emotional. And just in the same way, if a person shames their animal, their dog, the tail droops, their eyes droop, they become very sad, and they feel ashamed, much like people do when people are shamed.
They do, and they also absorb emotions from their owners. I find that a lot of the
Yeah.
time people don't like me telling them that, and I word it as gently as possible. But if you're going through trauma because you've just lost your job, and say you've got stress, anxiety, all those sorts of emotions, and you're hugging your cat or your dog or your chicken or your guinea pig or whatever while you're feeling those emotions, these little
How can they not
animals,
absorb your emotions?
they absorb it into their little
Of course.
selves, and
Yes, that's right.
it affects them.
And sometimes that's why they become sick. Sometimes that's
Yes,
why pets get cancer, because they're trying to take it away from their human. And so the human needs to really be conscientious to have boundaries and not let their pet absorb their cancer or their low emotions. Otherwise, they will get sick.
that's it. And working on how you can not create those emotions in a situation. So I say to people, What is a more beneficial way that you can respond to a difficult situation or a trauma situation so that you don't absorb
Yes,
those emotions? Because
that's
it
right.
benefits you. If you don't absorb them and you don't respond a certain way, you go, wow, I actually feel better this time when a similar thing happened last week when I felt terrible. Now you're rewiring your brain to react in more positive, beneficial ways that aren't going to create the drama, the trauma, because they just go together. Those two are like brother and sister. And when you don't create those, life is just so much more peaceful.
Yes. Well, and that's why it's so important to heal childhood wounds because otherwise they keep perpetuating themselves,
Oh, yes.
you know? So that's another thing I love to clear is those old wounds so that people can be free and create a new life, a new pattern of experiencing joy and happiness.
And sometimes they forget they're there, or they hide them so deeply because they're so traumatized. They hide them so deeply, whether it be in their chakras or their meridian lines, their organs, even in their consciousness. They just pack it all away. When you
Yes.
go in and you unpack all that and you find them, I don't get all the probably the detail that you do. I get what I call the pokes. Like my guides will give just enough information for me to clear what's there and then to poke the person to then go, oh, actually, yes, I remember when that happened. And then sometimes they need mental health care afterwards to then not create those emotions again. So I will suggest people see a mental health professional if they need to. Not everyone does, some people do. So I always offer that that is another level. If something is still affecting you in some way, because sometimes people don't want to let go of situations. That's the other thing. Is it something they're perpetually hanging on to because they get attention, or the human mind is really fascinating the way that it works.
Yeah, but you know what, Anna, the problem that I have with mental health professionals or traditional counselors is that, they keep talking about the issues and then it's a circular situation that you know what I mean? They keep going around in circles talking about it and sometimes um after leaving counseling sessions the client can have that trauma re-engaged or the anxiety or whatever it was, it's running in their head again. Don't you find that?
Yes, sometimes it is. I think that I've just, I don't know why. It's something that I found. I think I had a couple of clients that found benefit from it. So that's why I
Hmm.
suggested as a
Yeah.
possibility. I'm not
Yes.
medically trained, so I can't say yes, you definitely need to see a mental health professional. But I just give it as an option. Some
It
people
is an
are all
option.
different. They're not
Yeah.
different. Most of the time, it's like, wow, I feel really great now. This energy clearing's done. Away they go. Some people, everyone's different. So I just put that out
Yeah.
there as a possibility for them.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
It's just a possibility. Before we finish up today, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners? Would you like to share your website? I know you've mentioned it already, and I will include everything in the description box. But would you like to share what people will find on your website?
Of course, they be able to read about my Pechet healing technique, which I've developed over the last really over 33 years. And and also my work removing entities and earthbound spirits, demons. But again, my favorite my favorite things to clear for people are the more emotional issues like the grief, depression, anxiety, and I really accelerate at sorry, a little bit tired. I
Yeah.
excel at dissolving a core issue every session. So I also do an imprint at the end. I balance the client during the session. I raise their vital life force and and they'll feel it. I use a number scale and at the beginning they'll usually feel like a 8, a 9, or a 10 when we start the session. And as I'm working with them, the number is going down. And usually by the end of the session, they're down to maybe a 1 or a 2 or a 0. And the healing will continue working over the next 2 to 4 days. So by the end of their shift, it'll be down to a 0. So it makes the work that I do really efficient, because I can clear something big every session. And that's what I pride myself on, is accelerating their healing and their um, improvement in how they're feeling.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And I want to thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for giving us an hour of your time today to share who you are, what you do, and the wonderful gift that you give to the world. Thank you, Ellie.
Oh, oh, thank you, Anna. And the other thing I wanted to just mention is that people can sign up for a free 20-minute consultation on the website, which is phoenixrisinghealing.com.
Absolutely. Great. I'm sure we're going to talk again in the future. I feel like there's something coming for us. So thank you, Ellie. It's wonderful having you here with
Sure.
us today.
Thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed our dialogue very much.
If you like the content of this episode today, please think about leaving me a rating and a review. What reviews do is they let other people know your thoughts about my supernatural subject matter. People love reading reviews, and we're spreading the word about the real paranormal world around us. I would really appreciate it. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.